Hello, everybody. This meeting will be held in accordance with California Government Code Section 59453, subdivision of the Ralph M. Brown Act, California Government Code Section 54950, Series Resolution Number 2021-101, and the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act. While this meeting will be physically open to the public, given the state of emergency regarding the threat of COVID-19, members of the public may also participate and comment via the application Zoom. Zoom meeting information was posted on the agenda. Remote public comment is also available for the City Council meeting by emailing the City Clerk at cityclerk@ci.series.ca.us by 5 p.m. the day of the meeting. Include the agenda item number or public comment period in the subject line of the email. The clerk may read written comment into the record if specifically requested to do so at the beginning of your email. Your written comment will be distributed to the City Council and kept on file as part of the official record of the council meeting. And welcome everybody to Monday, October 25th, 2021 City Council meeting. Can we call to order, please? Roll call.
Councilmember Casey. Councilmember Rhino. Here. Councilmember Silvera.
Here.
And Mayor Lopez.
Here. And today's invocation will be by Pete Krischoff, Youth of Christ of Central Valley, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm representing Youth for Christ Central Valley, and we're very thankful for your leadership and also the opportunity to work with Ceres Unified School District often. So today, with being October 25th, I want to read just a part of Psalm 25 of David's prayer for our invocation for tonight. Show me the right path, O Lord. Point out the road for me to follow. Lead me by your truth and teach me, for you are the God who saves me. All day long I put my hope in you. Remember, O Lord, your compassion and your unfailing love, which you have shown from long ages past. Do not remember the rebellious sins of my youth. Remember me in light of your unfailing love, for you are merciful, O Lord. The Lord is good and does what is right. He shows the proper path to those who go astray. He leads the humble in doing right, teaching them his way. The Lord leads with unfailing love and faithfulness all who keep his covenant and obey his demands. May integrity and honesty protect me, for I put my hope in you. May integrity and honesty protect us, for we put our hope in you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We have no presentations today. Moving on to citizens communication. While the City Council welcomes and encourages participation in the City Council meetings, adopted rules allow no more than 5 minutes, Resolution 2007-106, for expression of non-agenda items. Matters under the jurisdiction of the City Council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public. However, California law prohibits the City Council from taking any action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the City Council. Citizens are entitled to address the City Council on any agenda item subject to a 5-minute provision. Let's now begin with comments on Zoom.
First person with their hand raised, Mayor, is Lee Brandt. Mr. Brandt, I'll unmute your mic.
Welcome.
Your mic is
Well,
unmuted.
thank you. Good evening, council. I just kind of want to check in on everybody. I happen to be in Pennsylvania right now, and all I hear on the news is rain, rain, rain. And it's thank you very much, but it looks like there's probably too much of it in such a short period of time. But and that and the fact that, that I am in Pennsylvania, that, council meetings with Zoom can be heard all around the world. So bless each and every one of you and hope everybody can get dry. I know you're drying out, but hope everything is safe and sane in Ceres. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any more hands on Zoom?
There are no other hands, Mayor.
Okay, let's move on to public comment from the public. So we have a yellow card, Mr. Osgood. We'll start with you. Welcome.
Good evening. So I opened up the Modesto Bee on Friday. What's it show me in there? That Chief Ernst and Modesto Fire Department want to start charging our insurance companies for services rendered. Want to send that bill to the insurance company. You know what happens then? Our rates go up. We were just given a contract and just affirmed a contract with an amount of money that should have been sufficient to provide for his employees. Every time we turn around, there's an unfortunate event happening to the people of this community. And this time it's to the greater community, not only Ceres, but to Modesto, Salida, Turlock, Keys, anyone who has an insurance policy under a system like that will notice rate increases. That's not arguable. If we need to trim the fat where employees are concerned, we need these administrators to come up with better negotiating skills. We don't need our insurance rates increasing because that's the next way to gain some money to fund our departments. I'm pretty sure we could have done a better job than now going out to bill homeowners insurance, medical insurance, car insurance, renters insurance. If you buy insurance, what Chief Ernst and the Modesto City Council will discuss in the near future will affect your bottom line. I'd like each of you to think about that. We still don't know who sits on the committee. We haven't heard as citizens who liaisons with the city manager in Modesto from this council. We're unaware of who we even speak to about these issues. I'd like that resolved immediately. We need to be informed who we can call and talk to in these types of situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osgood. Is there any members of the public who would like to speak? Mr. Yakeley, welcome.
Gene Yakeley Series. Seems to be an issue with some of us that are here a lot on how we can get things answered. And from what I understand, everything has to be put on an agenda just to get an answer, which sometimes that isn't the case. But I contacted one of the council members today by email and sent this portion. There's 2 items here I'm concerned about, and I'll read what I sent to them. There's been a few council meetings back, but there has never been an answer to the citizens of Ceres why the CPD, the Ceres Police Department, does not answer calls for illegal vendors anymore. This is only a code enforcement call that they should take care of. That's the answer I get. When in the past, Ceres Police Department answered some of the calls, and you and the city clerk, meaning the person I sent it to, and Diane, the city clerk, have told me that without something being on an agenda, a closed door meeting that is not, it won't be discussed inside a closed door meeting if it's not on an agenda for them. Well, if that is true, why has the Ceres Police Department gone another path and not going by the city code? As John Warren has spoken about at several council meetings. Can you explain that? I want an answer, and I would like that maybe those who do attend the city council meetings and those on Zoom or those who view the council meetings later on YouTube might like to hear the answer also why the Ceres Police Department is going against the codes that you, the city council, and others voted for. The second one is, I wrote, after another meeting this year, I mentioned, as I have many times in the past, about the noise issues with amplified music in our neighborhoods. At a meeting, I also provided a 1-page, 2-sided, which I gave all you guys at a city council meeting. One's in Spanish, only takes 1 page. I provided 1-page, 2-sided copies in English and Spanish of the noise chapter, which highlighted areas to gather the attention of those who receive a copy to the city council and the city manager and Chief Collins. An example of what could be handed out when an officer makes a call for a noise disturbance. It includes many areas of noise disturbances and not, let me emphasize, not just music. Not here for that. It's for all of the noise problems we have. After the city council meeting, I went up to Chief Collins and asked if what I presented to him and the council would be used just as I had presented it. He nicely responded and said he didn't think what I presented to hand out would be what would be used exactly by the Ceres Police Department. They would come up, they would work on some, excuse me. So many questions on this is what has happened to the requests for the city council and Ceres Police Department with using the idea of handing out a copy in English and Spanish of the code, chapter 4, noise 9.04.010, noise prohibited, and section 9.04.020, unnecessary noises, and parts A through I, section 904.030, exceptions to sections 9.04.010 and 9.04.020, and sections 9.04.040, penalty of violation to those citizens who violate the noise codes in Ceres. I want these two to be put on an agenda, and I beg the citizens here in Ceres to get involved in their community, whether it's on Zoom or something else. We're not getting anywhere with a lot of things in the city. We need answers, and these people that are paying taxes and whatever for positions, for people that have positions in the city, I think that they deserve to get some answers. And if it means putting everything that everybody comes up here on an agenda, then that's what we're going to have to do. So please put these two items on the agenda and get back to me when we can talk about these things and get answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else?
Good
Well-
evening,
Give me one
members of the
second.
council, John Warren Series.
Never mind.
I have a question in regards to the same thing with Mr. Osgood. The Modesto Fire Department is planning to charge for the calls that they respond to, accident calls, assistance at home calls for health issues, ambulance calls, things like this. And my question is, are they going to charge the citizens of Ceres those calls? They plan on doing it with the citizens of Modesto. So I don't know how it rolls over if they respond to a motor vehicle accident call on 99 and that person is not from their city. I'm not sure if they can reach out to a insurance group if that person doesn't live within their jurisdiction. That's a question that needs to be answered. Question needs to be answered. Are they going to do that to our citizens, to the insurance companies of our citizens? And Mr. Osgood is exactly right. The insurance companies are going to roll back those costs to the customer in the form of higher premiums. I know my homeowners association insurance policy went up this year quite considerable, and that's just the normal increases that are going on in life. But to burden our insurance companies with additional charges that aren't already built into the system, I don't think is the proper thing to do. And since we're paying a contract for services rendered, it should not be necessary for them to collect additional funds from our citizens. So that's something you folks need to address. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Reiner would like to speak.
My question is, when a citizen such as Mr. Yeakley requests that an item be put on the agenda, how is that handled? I know that we've done agenda requests differently over the last few years, and I thought the last time we had a citizen come before, it was answered right then. I believe it was only up to the mayor. I could be wrong. I don't know if the city clerk knows that off the top of her head or the city attorney, but it seems like when they come up to the podium at that time, either their request is approved or not. That's my question.
As I recall, for example, the mayor might agree with that, and then he would look for concurrence from the council. That's how it was done previously. That's my recollection.
But we do it the same night as this individual is asking. You don't hold it off. I mean, that's what I remember what happened before, but the city clerk might.
I think I recall in the past, council has either directed the matter to, like the mayor has directed staff to work with the individual and they would bring the item back.
So it's up to the mayor to either move forward with Mr. Yeakley's request to put it on the agenda or not.
I think in the past, I recall that council gave direction to staff to work with the individual, to bring an item back.
So it's all to the concurrence of council.
Correct.
Okay. So we do it tonight. We don't hold it off another day. Correct?
That's my understanding. Yes.
Sorry.
That's my understanding. Yes, that that's what was done in the past.
Thank you.
I don't know if Tom agrees.
Right. That's how I recall it as well.
So for clarification, you're suggesting that it's at the will of the council where we move forward with something like that? Wouldn't that be considered under recommendations? Like a council member could bring that up tonight during that section if they would like to, or is it?
Well, it kind of ran the gamut. I think a lot of times it was, you'd have concurrence to have the city manager look into it. That might not necessarily mean it's on a future agenda, the next week or two necessarily, but the manager was directed to look into that and either have an agenda item in the future or just report back to you on what he found.
I'll just make a comment, and Mr. Yeakley, feel free to email me, and so we can look into it. Would that be okay with you, sir? Because I don't think I received that email. If I got it within the last couple hours, I haven't checked my email. But at this moment, we're going to have a discussion just real quick about what we're going to do. So at this moment, I think the best thing is if you could just email me, and we'll go from there. Mr. Yeakley.
And Mayor, I would
Yes,
have to
ma'am.
disagree with that because if you listen to Mr. Yeakley, his chief complaint is that he has talked to staff, he's talked to the council, and he's never gotten an answer. And I think by putting him off again and responding to the email is really responding to what hopefully his right is and what we should do. I mean, he so far has emailed people, he's talked to people, he's not getting answers. So he wants to be heard on an agenda where not only he, but other citizens can hear because they hear him coming to the podium with the same complaints and nothing ever seems to get done. That's my understanding.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from.
Okay, I have a comment. It's obvious there's different ideas about how we should do this and possibly there's different ways we can. At this point, I think it behooves us to first look at the process that is set up in our municipal code or wherever to figure out how somebody from the community can ask for something to be put on the agenda. Before we decide what we're going to do with Mr. Yake's issue or anybody else's, let's find out what the right process is. Most of us are new and inexperienced here and we're learning like a lot of you on the fly. And I think it behooves us to look into that and maybe the city manager can direct staff to try to figure that out by the next time we meet. And then we'll have a clear direction, just like we did when we were struggling with council members putting things on the agenda. We finally had to find out exactly what the process is. I think we should start with that.
Mr. Yeakley, don't take this as me just trying to put you off. I agree with Mr. Silvera. I need to be concrete to make sure that what the process is before I make a decision. So I'm just letting you know that that's the way I'm going to go about this. And respects to Ms. Councilmember, respect to you, to your opinion. We shouldn't be making a decision right away. I think that we should most definitely look into it.
And our city attorney doesn't know what it is. You don't know what the process is.
Don't think we have one specifically for citizens to get something on the agenda.
Let's find out before we move any further on this matter. I think 100% we need to find out if we have it listed, written somewhere. If not, then I guess we'll have to decide how we do it going forward.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody remember what the duration of his 5 minutes was? I'm just kidding with you. Why don't you come on up and go ahead.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, no problem.
I've been asking to address, municipal code issues for a long time, get something agendized. Here's my suggestion. We have a new business section on our agenda. Not just new business for staff, not just new business for the council. Council gets to handle their referrals and council referrals. Let's address one thing right now. This is not an emergency situation. We should not be discussing it at this time. Let's readdress this during new business as we should be doing properly in this meeting.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Osgood. I appreciate that. Does anybody else have anything to say? Citizens Communications? Mr. Peterson?
Good evening. My name is Brian Peterson. I'm the president for the Series Police Officers Association. I just want to take a moment to thank each of you on behalf of our Police Officers Association. The contract, which was decided upon, was much needed and long overdue in order to create unity amongst our officers, which we have not had in many years. The previous council members who came before you were not able to, or perhaps not interested in helping us achieve this unity quicker. We appreciate the direction at which you authorized the HR director, Teresa Rowland, and the city's labor attorney, Che Johnson, for this contract to be agreed upon by our membership. In doing so, it has allowed us to retain one of our current canine handlers who was already going to start with the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department. We've also been able to hire a seasoned and qualified officer in the last recent weeks. Before this contract, we were the second lowest paid agency with the third largest city population in our county. With this contract, we will once again be able to compete with our neighboring agencies when hiring and looking for great officers. Once again, the Series Police Officer Association just wants to say thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I appreciate the comments. Anybody else in the audience that would like to speak?
Hello, my name is Ray Smith, 3537 Morgan Road. I have a public records request to submit, please.
Is this something you would like to read or you want us to?
I just submit it.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm here to protect my interest in my property. I'd like to place the Morgan Road Improvement Project on the agenda for the next city council meeting. The city has had the grant for the widening of Morgan Road on its table since 2016. The city did not reach out to the property owners until sending a letter a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks before the deadline for the grant. At a meeting shortly after receiving the letter with the manager, city manager, and the engineers, they listened to my concerns of safety and advised me that they would sit down and get back to me with any revisions that they could do and go over them. Shortly after, I received an email stating that we were going on with the original plans and was advised that it already submitted them to the state. Meet the deadline, and there would be no follow-up discussion. I'd like this to be added to the next meeting agenda to give myself and the other ranchette owners, some who I believe have no idea that this is happening, a chance to be heard, discuss the safety issues, extra calls to service, and other concerns with this project. I believe that these property owners have the right and should have been included in these discussions all the way back to 2016. As it has greatly affected our properties and the safety of our families, as well as the ongoing parking issues with existing area that is being widened already. I understand that the city has gone through many changes, and the people involved, given this last minute, are under the pressure to get this through or lose the grant money. But this is a very big safety issue, it needs to be addressed before proceeding forward. No disrespect to the city manager or the engineering department, because they had little knowledge of this project coming in short time to do it. With all the other projects in front of them, like the new Walmart, the surrounding area, I believe there was just not enough time allotted to look at the Morgan Road project before it got pushed through. However, it is a big deal to my family and I in our home of over 30 years. So we just addressed problem. I wanted to get this on the agenda, so I believe it was the city clerk, and asked them, as it, I believe it said on the website, if you wanted to get something on the agenda. I was referred to come to this meeting, and that between the city council and the mayor, what I understood, would look it over and be able to possibly put it on the next agenda. Obviously, this is new to you guys too. This is a time-consuming matter, as it has already been submitted. This thing's been going on since 2016. At not one point have they contacted these owners of the property. We aren't talking about just putting a sidewalk in front of my property. We're talking about taking 30 feet of my property, putting these roads right on my doorstep. There's definitely some safety concerns, and there's just no way with all these, not even the surrounding neighbors, but the actual ones. I learned about this as a surveying crew was on my yard without even a phone call. They're in there surveying my property. I go out to see what's going on. He hands me a business card and says, you might want to call them. They're taking the front of your property. There is an easement on the property, but for this thing to be in 2016 till now is just, even when the city manager was in disbelief, I think when we sat down in our conversation, that this is the first we're hearing of it. You know, and this is just unacceptable. And I believe two of our neighbors don't even know about it. This letter that the reason I found about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago is in English. Two of them I don't believe speak any English. So it might not be a bad idea when we're sending out these letters to do it in two different forms also. But
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Your time is up.
But with that being said, though, could we revisit how this happens, or?
Mr. Smith, your time is up, but
Yeah.
interim city manager, if all possible, if you can gather us a report and send that to the city council and give us an update on that, that would be great. And we will look into this, Mr. Smith. We just want to make sure that we get all the facts straight. Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Any other emails or,
No, Mayor.
okay. Public comment period is now closed. Moving on to vice mayor selection. Council to vote on the mayor's recommendation. And my recommendation for vice mayor is Councilmember Silvera. If there is any discussion need to be had in regards to this, any comments from my council?
A comment. If so inclined, yeah, I would gladly accept that position. And thank you very much, Mayor, for.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the council and you. If we can, I motion to appoint Councilmember Silvera as vice mayor. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
The roll call, please.
Councilmember Casey,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhino,
No,
Councilmember Silvera,
Yes.
and Mayor Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1.
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, do we know if, how this works? Is it, he is filling the unexpired term from when Vice Mayor
believe
Condit?
so, yes.
So it'll be a year,
I
basically.
believe so, yes, because other vice mayor did not finish his term. So it has to be 2 years, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Before you move on, another thing, let's find out for sure.
We will find out for sure, but that's just
Before we
my,
say, yes, that's the way it is. Thanks.
we will bring back an update on that. Okay, moving on. Is there a conflict of interest from the city council on any consent items? Finding none. I said, is there a conflict of interest on any of these items? Okay. Moving on, all matters listed on the consent item calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted on a single motion unless otherwise requested by an individual council member or public for special consideration. Otherwise, the recommendation of staff will be accepted and enacted upon by roll call vote. Now, is there anyone on the council that would like a consent item pulled? Seeing Ms. Rhino? Yes, ma'am.
Items 6, 8, and 9.
6, 8, and 9. Thank you. Any other council members? Any members of the public? I do have one yellow card, and I believe Mr. Osgood has pulled number 4 on the consent item calendar. Being that 6 is also pulled, which you also requested to pull, is also on there. So it's going to be, we're going to pull 4, 6, 8, and 9.
Move to approve 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7 on the consent calendar.
Second.
Get a roll call, please.
Councilmember Casey,
Aye.
Councilmember Rhino,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Silvera,
Yes.
and Mayor Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
We are going to start with number 4. Register of audit demands for period covering October 6, 2021 through October 13, 2021.
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
Not going to line item this again this time. Just point out that there's a lot of conference or per diem spending in here. We're going to address an item tonight where we're dealing with the people's business and the first and foremost expense that we have in government, electing the people's representatives or appointing a member of the council. Just want to let you know, we're halfway there in the unnecessary items in this line item tonight. So if we tighten our belts on these bi-weekly expenditures, we could fund the people's business very easily without hearing, well, we can't do that because we just don't have the money. Need to harp on this every 2 weeks, but we need to tighten up our budget. We need to tighten up our spending. We need to behave like it ain't our money. It's someone else's. Some of these conferences and fraternal organization dues and things of this nature are not necessary.
Thank you.
Move to approve number 4 consent calendar.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Aye.
Councilmember Rhino,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Silvera,
Yes.
and Mayor Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Item number 6. Resolution number 2021-108, authorizing the application and acceptance of an assistance to firefighter grant, AFG, for the purpose of protective equipment and related supplies to prepare for and respond to COVID-19. Councilmember Ms. Rhino, is this one of the items that you had pulled?
Yes.
Okay, we'll start with you, and I know that Mr. Osgood also pulled this.
Okay. When we submitted for this grant, it was in 2020, and at that time, we still had Ceres firefighters. They were actually employees of Ceres. The firefighters are now employees of Modesto Fire. And when part of the contract with Modesto stated that all of the PPEs, personal protection equipment, that we had in our possession would become the, would belong to Modesto Fire, would no longer belong to Ceres Fire, that we basically had our things and our fire apparatus. So my question is, to look at this grant that's awarding this money, which is, it's a great thing, going to provide for more PPEs, but it states it's for Ceres Fire, which in turn, you don't put PPEs, aren't for a building, they're for firefighters. So how can we accept that? We don't have firefighters. Modesto has firefighters. They work in Ceres. But again, our contract states PPEs are the ownership of Modesto Fire. So what I'm afraid of is by accepting the grant, do we then fall under the potential of Article 16 of the grant that states False Claims Act and Program Fraud Civil Remedy? Because we know that we don't have Ceres firefighters. We know that those PPEs that are part of this, that the grant will allow to be bought, are going to Modesto Fire. And again, it may or may not go to firefighters that are stationed in Ceres, but I don't know how we can accept the grant money. And I know over the years, whenever we've applied for a grant, if there was any hesitancy on the council was always told that all we're doing is applying for it. If it's awarded, you can still turn it down. You don't have to accept it. And now you're dealing with Homeland Security. They're the ones who the grant is through. I would imagine that they probably have audits, not to say that somebody's going to audit this specific contract or this grant, but what if they do? And somebody goes, oh, wait, you don't have firefighters employed by the city of Ceres. So you accepted this grant under false pretenses. And that's my concern. I don't believe the way it's worded, it's intended for Ceres firefighters, and we don't have employees that are firefighters.
I have a comment. The way I read it, actually, it's the city will receive the equipment, not the firefighters. In my opinion, would make that become the property of the city of Modesto. This equipment would be in Ceres and stay in Ceres and be the property of Ceres.
Does it say it'll stay in Ceres?
Yes, it says the city will receive equipment purchased by Keys Fire Protection District equaling $4,500. The grant will pay for a bunch of it. Equipment costs and 5% of matching funds owned will be absorbed by the fire department budget. So that equipment will be city equipment.
And
not-
then if you look at the contract with Modesto Fire, it says that they own the PPE that the city has.
I don't read this as PPE. I read it as equipment. And like we know when we awarded that contract, that all the equipment from Ceres will stay in Ceres. And this says the city will receive equipment.
Okay, well, the agenda report for tonight says it's for the purchase of protective equipment. And if you look at the contract that we had with Fire, printed it out, the word. .6 under the contract with Modesto Fire says personal protective equipment, PPE. Ceres agrees to transfer to city all PPE assigned to current Ceres personnel, all PPE on fire apparatus, and all spare PPE.
May I add take it back off for a question? You bring up some good points, but in that we're referring to existing. So at the time of the contract, we're receiving new equipment for the city of Ceres.
right? This is post, and there's also a general proposition that the specific controls the general. So in this case, the specifics that this goes to the city, in addition to the fact that it's equipment that's post-contract. I think it's clear that it's for the city and that either way, there would be no intent to defraud. That would get us some problem and trouble under the grant, excuse me.
Right, and then not to mention that I understand Ms. Rhino's position, those, whether we're in a contract with the city of Modesto, they are still Ceres firefighters. I just want to make sure that you just clarified for her, because I just want to make sure, Ms. Rhino, that I understand where you're coming from. You don't want to
Well,
come off with false pretenses.
she's correct that, that equipment at that time
Right, that's
is,
what.
but this is
just getting credit.
specifically for series. And again, either way, there's no intent to defraud that would expose us to any liability under the grant.
I just want to make sure, Ms. Rhino, that you are asking the right question, that you're receiving the answer that you want before.
Well, we might have a Ceres Fire Department in name, but we don't have any firefighters. They are not our employees. They are Modesto's employees.
Which is correct.
Okay.
So when you say that that your concern is that we are falsifying the documents that we submitted to receive the grant, I want to make sure that it is clear that we are not.
Right,
But
even if this is considered PBE, it's still post our contract with Modesto. So it's ours, just like the engines are ours.
Right. I just want to make sure, 'cause I understand where you're coming from, Ms. Rhino. I don't want,
Chief Ernst is on Zoom tonight, and I believe we have somebody that's willing to speak about this from the Modesto Fire also.
oh, how you doing, sir?
Good evening.
But before you speak, sir, I'm actually going to allow Mr. Casey to speak.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this resolution, like the resolution number 4, we're asked to vote on something that's already happened. I think that the city of Modesto had an obligation to clear this with us before the signature was made. Just like some of these expenditures, they're already spent. It's not a matter of approving them. It's a matter of fact that we've already spent the money, so we have an obligation to pay the people that's been, in this contract, the way I read it, it's going to cost the city of Ceres $200 and some odd, and we're going to get $7,000 worth of equipment. But the point is, that commitment was made, and it could have just as well been a grant for $1 million, and we would have had to come up with $200,000. Even though it's a small thing, and even though we've just started this contract, I think it's imperative that the city of Modesto make sure before they spend any money, whether before they obligate us to spend any money, that we're all on the same page. That's my only point.
Thank you. If the council has no more questions, go ahead, sir.
Good evening. I'm Richard Scola, Battalion Chief with the Modesto Fire Department. I'm here to answer your questions about this specific topic tonight and clear up any confusion it might have. As you know, this grant application was entered into in June of 2020 amidst a lot of COVID chaos. And from my understanding, the multiple jurisdictions that participated in the regional grant were under a short time frame to enter into this MOU for the protective clothing. At the time it was done, I can't explain why it was done out of the normal operating procedure. It just was done. The Keys Fire Department hosted the regional grant and fronted the matching 5% funds of the total grant for the region. And then in turn, began invoicing each individual agency. Internally, the Keys Fire Department had a change in management staff and board members, secretarial staff. So when a new fire chief came on board, they did an audit and found that there were invoices pending. That's when they sent the city of Ceres an invoice recently. Myself and staff did some homework and found out that in order to make this right, correct, so that everything looked good for any future opportunities with grants, that the proper thing to do was to generate a staff report, resolution, and finalize the payment to the Keys Fire Department for $218.48. The equipment was sent to the city of Ceres. It is here in the fire station. I believe it was 35 individual maps, and they are equipping the fire engines in Ceres. I verified that myself. So we did enter into the grant. It was awarded. We did receive the equipment, and there is an obligation for that $215 to the Keys Fire Department from the city of Ceres.
Thank you for that information. I do appreciate it. Council, do you have any more questions? Mr. Osgood.
Thank you.
Please, thank you.
Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency. It's an executive level agency. It's formed through an executive order, not through statute in Congress. And if you read Article 2 of the United States Constitution, there's no authority for the president to engage in executive orders. There was no authority for people who took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the state of California, to even engage in an application for a grant of this nature. I don't come before you guys not knowing what I'm talking about. Every individual that affirmed to file for that grant violated the oaths of office that they took. I don't care if they're a firefighter. I don't care if they're a city council member. Violated the oath of office they took. We need to keep that in mind. I'm asking you guys to behave according to the promises you made the people when you took office. I understand that this was in 2020. I understand it's already happened. I understand the money's there. Now we owe Keys $218. We would not be in this position if our representatives knew how the Constitution intended things to work. And furthermore, for the federal government to tax us and redistribute it through any program considered to be general welfare, it has to apply evenly to all 50 states, not per capita. Every state has to get the exact same amount. That's the general welfare clause. It's an equity thing. It's not, we can get it because they're going to give it to us. This money is tax money stolen from the people with no regard to your oaths. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osgood.
Mayor, Chief Ernst has his hands raised. He would like to speak.
Mr. Ernst, he's on Zoom. Before we go on to Zoom, or is he here in person? I'm sorry.
He's on
He's on
Zoom.
Zoom.
Before we go on to Zoom, let's just go ahead and finish anybody that's here that would like to speak in person. You had your hand up. Yeah, I thought you had your hand up.
Really quiet.
Sorry about that. Yes, I'm asking if anybody else in the public would like to speak. Sorry about that.
My question in regard to this, because I didn't understand some of that, is who applied for the grant? Did the city of Ceres, or was it a district thing and it was going to be shared by different fire departments? Who applied for the grant? Did Modesto? Did Ceres?
The Keys,
Did Keys?
Keys Fire Department.
So Keys applied for the grant, but it affected everyone in the region?
Mr. Warren, I think Chief Ernst, who's on the call and is ready to speak, could probably answer that question for you better than anyone in the room.
Thank you.
Don't mind.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor. This is Alan Ernst. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Ernst. Thank you for joining us. If you have a couple of
Yeah.
answers for us, that'd be great.
Yes, and I appreciate the opportunity and Chief Scola's remarks. This grant was a regional grant that was hosted by Keys Fire Department. It was done in 2020 prior to the contract with City of Modesto. City of Modesto Fire Department had no involvement in the Ceres portion of this grant. However, once we did have the contract and the accounting came from the Keys Fire Department, we wanted to correct it and make sure it was the bill was paid. So I do appreciate the council's comments. I guarantee you in the future, with city of Modesto and the Modesto Fire Department, if we were to bring forward a grant, we would follow the process to make sure we have approval from council before that grant is applied for. But that was done prior to the contract with us. It was received prior to our contract. And now it's just cleaning it up to make sure that we meet all the obligation that was agreed upon prior to that. So it was a regional grant hosted by Keys Fire Department. That's pretty standard when we do a regional approach to grants. One agency takes the lead. And so unfortunately, I can't speak on the series administration at that time of how the process they followed, but we did receive the invoice and that's why we brought it forward to council. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Council, do you have any more questions? Yes, sir. Please come up.
He didn't answer the question. Who applied for the grant? If the city of Ceres is expected to pay a certain amount of money, then we should have applied for the grant. Some other city or some other fire district can't apply for something and ask us to pay the bill. How does that happen?
So I don't know if that is the case, Mr. Ernst. Do you have
No.
an answer?
The city of Ceres did, in essence, apply with the grant. The city
There you go.
of Keys hosted the grant. Ceres joined in on the grant. However, for whatever reason, they did not come to council asking for that approval at that time. But they did sign on as a participant in the grant. So no agency filed the grant without Ceres knowledge or permission from the fire department.
Mayor and council, that's what the resolution does here. It authorizes you to participate.
Okay.
Who in the city of Ceres signed that application for that grant?
When was this submitted?
2020, he's
Hold on,
telling
hold on,
us,
hold on,
Mr.
hold on,
Ernst
hold
is
on,
telling
hold
us.
Mr. Hallinan, when was this submitted?
I believe it sometime in 2020. What I'm saying is, as the chief
Full-
has
this is-
said, this is the council authorizing participation.
understand what this
in the
is.
grant Now.
Yeah, I understand what this is. Thank you. You're not going to have an answer for that because it might have been before us.
If
So,
you can't get those
How
answers,
about this? How about this? We will find out and we will try to get a hold of you with that answer, but obviously there is no answer today.
let me finish my comment.
Well,
If you
absolutely. Go
can't
ahead and
get
finish your
those
comment.
answers, you should not vote to approve this. We have a contract with the city of Modesto.
Wait a second. So
They
you're
need to
asking
pay
me,
the bill.
you're telling me that we shouldn't approve something that you're asking just one specific question, who signed it? But in reality, we just answered your questions. Besides that one, say that one more time.
Let it go. I'll move to approve number 6 on the consent calendar, resolution number 2021-108.
Second. May I get a roll call, please?
Member Casey,
Aye.
Councilmember Rhino,
No,
Vice Mayor Silvera,
Yes,
Mayor Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1.
Moving on to number 8, resolution number 2021-10110, ratifying the memorandum of understanding between the city of Ceres and the First Line Supervisor Group. I believe this is something Ms. Rhino,
Yes.
correct? Thank you.
yes. The first line in the staff report says the memorandum of understanding is effective July 1st. This is now October 25th, and I don't recall any discussion about retroactivity. And I would also question staff or this council, why you would approve retroactivity for the first line supervisor group, yet the last meeting, that was not, and that didn't even come up in the MOU for the miscellaneous employees who are made up of custodians, parks workers, building maintenance, all of those positions. So I would question why first line supervisor get retroactivity, but that other group did not. And again, I don't recall discussion about retroactivity.
If I can answer, retroactivity is not part of this contract. The first full pay period following ratification and council approval, the 3% increase will go into effect without retroactivity.
So even though it says effective July 1st, not mean there is retroactivity?
In the wage increase section, the wage increase will be active the first full pay period following ratification and council approval.
Thank you.
Mr. Rowland, correct me if I'm wrong. If it was going to be retroactive, we would have to have that language in here, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Councilmember Rhino. Any comments from the public? Anyone on Zoom?
Move to approve number 8, resolution 2021-110.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Casey,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhino,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Silvera,
Yes.
and Mayor Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Moving on to resolution number 2021-111, ratifying the memorandum of the understanding between the City of Ceres and the Ceres Police Officer Association. 3:56. So we have 4 minutes to talk about this, and we have to hold off.
All right.
But Ms. Rhino, go ahead.
It's the same question, but it's been answered by Mrs. Rowland that the POA is also not getting retroactivity.
Correct. They are not.
Thank you.
Move to approve number 9, resolution 2021-111.
Well, wants to make sure that anybody from the audience wants to speak on this. Want to make sure anybody on Zoom. Moving on. Councilmember. Vice
Move
Mayor.
to approve resolution 2021-111.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Casey,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhino,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Silvera,
Yes.
and Mayor Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you very much, council. I appreciate this. Historical. Moving on. Well, actually,
Good timing.
we'll take a small recess and come back at 7 p.m. We are going to be discussing, having a public hearing at 7 o'clock. So I now adjourn to a recess until 7. Thank you. down. I really greatly appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, we will start the meeting. Oh, I love it. Do we have the person that is going to speak on? Okay.
And we'll introduce. them.
Council, we are now back on. Just a heads up. Thank you very much, everyone.
There we go.
Okay, we can begin.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and
Sorry about
Council. This is the redistricting public hearing, excuse me, tonight. The background we presented to you before, this is the public hearing process, the public participation process begins tonight. We have Doug Yoakum from NDC who's going to present some detail on that, and then you will have your first public hearing tonight, the first of 4. And I can take any questions or we can get right to Doug. Council's pleasure.
We are ready unless the council has any
Then
questions.
again, after his report, you'll have the public hearing and include the
Bottom.
public participation at that time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Let's begin.
Very good. Everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Doug Yoakum with the National Demographics Corporation. We've been hired to help the city of Ceres and residents through this redistricting process this year. Let's go through the schedule really quickly. On page 2, much of this has already happened. The census released their data. The California statewide database refined that data as per state law in order to adjust for people in correctional facilities and assigned all those people back to their original homes where they came from. Tonight is the night of your first public hearing, where we can hear from people about what they think of the process, and if anyone has any concerns or questions. And then January 10th is your actual next hearing. And as I'll describe in this presentation, we may have some items that people will be interested in and they can participate in by that time. We can go to the next page. We will be providing the city with some what we call mapping tools, and that they allow residents to draw their own maps and submit them as ideas to the city. The deadline for that will be January 22nd, so that we can prepare them and be ready for your third hearing, which is February 5th. And then we'll have another deadline for more maps after the council directs me to revise any of the maps that they've seen and what directions they want the districts to go. And then our final hearing will be March 14th, where we will go over those maps again and hopefully adopt one of them as your final map. Here's your population according to the adjusted census. It's 49,464. So we will be drawing 4 districts. And so the ideal population in each one of those districts is approximately 12,366 people. Here are the laws that we are required to follow, both state and federal. First of all, the federal law, it requires equal population. The phrase used in the law is substantially equal, which basically means each district has to be very much equal with the other ones. we have to follow the Federal Voting Rights Act, which simply requires that we not discriminate against any protected class of voters by splitting them up or combining them in a way that takes away their opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice in a district. And we cannot racially gerrymander either, which means that we cannot set out to draw districts based on race. So it's a balance. We have to respect communities, but we also have to not specifically favor a racial group when we draw a district. The California Fair Maps Act requires that each district be geographically contiguous. It has to be connected to itself. There cannot be pieces of a district all over the city. We have to respect neighborhoods and communities of interest as we identify them through the process. I'll explain what those are later. To the extent possible, we should follow easily identifiable boundaries, such as major streets, creeks, rivers, railroad tracks, freeways, if I didn't mention them already, so that people can understand where the lines are, so that they don't meander through neighborhoods and in a confusing way, so folks cannot understand what district they live in. And finally, the MAPS Act requires that the districts, to the extent possible, be compact. There's one prohibition in the Fair Maps Act, and that is that we shall not favor or discriminate against a political party when we draw districts. There's some traditional redistricting principles that, because they are not prohibited by the Fair Map Act, and they are not specifically required by the MAP Act, we can follow at our discretion. And that is, one of them is respecting voters' choices. In other words, the folks who have been elected to office, we can endeavor not to put each one of them in a district with another one, so that everybody has an opportunity, if they so choose, to run for re-election. But again, we're not discriminating against any particular class of voters, and we're going to equalize the districts so that they all have equal population. You can start from the current districts as your basis, and you can also draw a map completely and not worry about the current lines. But one of the traditional principles that is often followed in many cities is let's start with the current map and see where we are and see what changes we need to make. You can also account for future population growth if you so choose. And that means if there is going to be a lot of growth in a particular part of your city, you can place that part of the city in a district and underpopulate that district a little bit, so that you know that over 10 years there's going to be growth in it. But that would require that another district be overpopulated. And so you don't want to go too far afield on that, because going back to the original #1 priority that we have to follow, these districts have to be each district has to be substantially equal to the other ones. So you don't want to go too far afield on accounting for population growth. Next slide, please. This was a map that our company did for you in 2015 when the current districts were drawn. It shows where the Latino communities are in Ceres. And the only reason I showed this is to show you on the next map, so you can look at it on the next page. These are your current districts, and you can see, if you look at the two maps, that the Latino community was respected and not divided. And that's what we mean by not following the Voting Rights Act and not dividing communities. The Latino community on your southeast side is contained in one district. The Latino community on your east side is contained in District 3. And then your north side community is contained in District 1. I think you can see that pretty clearly when you compare the two maps. So what do we mean when we talk about neighborhoods? And this is what we'd like to hear from the residents of Ceres about. What is your neighborhood, and do you think it's important to keep it together in a district, either in a current district or some other district? Describe your community to us, your neighborhood to us. Is it based around a park or a school or some other neighborhood landmark? And please do tell us what the boundaries of your neighborhood is, either streets or other geographic factors. And there's a place on your city's website where you can direct an email to us and tell us what you think your neighborhood might be. Next slide, please. And communities of interest are somewhat different in that it's a geographic area, but it has a shared issue or characteristic, either a social or economic interest that a group of people have. And they wish to be put together in a district in order to advocate for that particular interest or policy. It could be traffic, it could be law enforcement, it could be transit, public transit routes through the city. Whatever folks, a group of people are concerned about, if they want to be put together in a district, they can express that to us, and then to the extent possible, we have to keep that community together. And the question is, and this is the definition of community of interest contained in state law, would this community benefit from being included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation? And there are some communities of interest that like to be in more than one district. I don't know if that applies to your city, but if it does, I'm sure we'll hear from some of the folks in your community. And let me tell you quickly what a community of interest is not. It is not including a relationship with a political party, with an incumbent, or a political candidate. That is not a community of interest. As I said earlier, we're going to provide the city, your staff has ordered some of the some tools that people can use to help us draw districts. They can draw their own districts and tell us how they think the lines should go. Some of them are simple and do not require computers. Others are computer-based and can be used on a regular old laptop or any other computer. Whatever device you use, we welcome any kind of input. And believe it or not, we have received districts or drawings on paper napkins before. So anything people have, feel free to give it to us, bring it to the city hall or send it to us by email, and I'll give you that address at the end of this. Here's one of the tools we'll be providing. It's a tool that people can use to review the maps once we post them. It's pretty simple. You cannot use it to draw districts, but you can use it to look to see how districts, where the districts are and who is inside of them. It'll have demographic information that people can look at and various layers that they can add so they can understand who is inside of this district and what the district looks like. I have to make a caveat here. This was put in this presentation earlier. District R is a very good tool that's being used by many, many people right now. And it got so popular that the folks at Tufts University back in Pennsylvania that developed it have gone out of business. They basically said, we can't handle the volume anymore. So we will not be providing District R, but we will be providing a different tool that is very similar. It's, if anybody is familiar with Dave's redistricting app, it's going to, that's where we're going to base it out of. And it'll simply be a map of series that folks can draw lines on, and it'll tell you what your population is as you go along. What you see in front of you now is what we call the simple map drawing tool, or the paper map. This will be a map of your city. It'll have the population numbers on it. People can draw lines around those numbers and add them up, and hopefully come up with that ideal population of around 12,000 and send it in to us. If people are familiar with Excel, if you look at the next slide, it's that paper map, and instead of the population numbers on it, each population unit has a number, and then you assign that number to your Excel spreadsheet down on the lower left side. And then Excel, as you can see on the lower right, will add it up for you. And it'll give you all the demographic information in your district that you've drawn. So it's for people who are familiar, a little more familiar with computers and use Excel. They can draw districts instead of using a pen. They can do it using their Excel spreadsheet. This is a new phenomenon this year. A lot of people have their own computer programming that draws districts. They're called GIS systems. If there are people like that in Ceres and they want to submit a map to us, it has to be in these formats. And then we'd appreciate it if a description of what that district or those districts are doing is included. And then this is the redistricting email address for your city that not only people can send their own maps in, they can send email comments about others' maps, or just comments about their neighborhoods and what they'd like to see, how they'd like to see maps and lines drawn in the city of Ceres as we go along. That's all I have. Looking forward to hear from the public if they have any questions, and members of the council if they have comments as well. Thank you very much. I'm here to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Should we, Helen, a quick question. Should we open this up to the public first, or does council discuss this first? It doesn't make a difference.
At this point, I'd ask if council had any questions.
Wanted to make sure, Councilmember Rhino.
Our consultant.
Councilmember Rhino, you have a question?
I do have a question. You stated that basically each district would have about 12,366 people. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you tell us what the current numbers are for the current districts that were already adopted?
I do not have that information yet. As was described earlier, the data came out late this year, and we're still trying to put it all together for all of our clients. The numbers I gave you are from the statewide database. The total population is easily available, and they also have some demographic information there if you're interested in it. But I do not have the population numbers for each individual district yet.
Do you have what it was when it was approved by the council?
I was not with the company back then when we helped you draw those districts, but obviously they are different now. Yes. No, I don't have those numbers. No.
Okay. Do you have an idea of when we will find out how many people live in each district?
I will get that to you in the next 2 weeks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody, any questions, council, besides Councilman Moreno? Okay, let's go ahead and open the public hearing. So the public hearing is now open. Anybody in the chambers who, well, actually, we'll start with Zoom before we go to the chambers. Do we have any hands?
There are no hands raised, Mayor.
Okay. Members of the public that would like to speak on this matter? Just now, before we do that, actually, no, we'll just wait for a moment.
Daniel Padilla has his hand raised. Mr. Padilla, unmute your mic. Your mic is unmuted.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Listening to Mr. Doug Yoakum, he mentioned that some natural boundaries for council districts could potentially be, state freeways and the railroad. So, I mean, our biggest natural boundary is State Route 99. And I would like to see moving forward that we contain one district completely on the west side of State Route 99. I mean, to me, that would be an obvious boundary to encompass one complete district. And I think, especially right now, since there's a vacancy on the council, I think it's an ideal time to make that happen. And then I guess I have a question for Mr. Yoakum. When we're going through the redistricting process, and there's a council vacancy, would you recommend waiting until this process is over, or is that something you can comment on?
Through the mayor? No, the council vacancy is kind of irrelevant to redistricting in that we are drawing 4 districts for the 22 election. 2 of them will be up in 2022 and 2 of them will be up in 2024. So the vacancy is irrelevant to the redistricting process.
And we have a timeline as well to meet. So, yeah.
I guess what I was getting at is that, I mean, one of the characteristics or guiding principles that you mentioned was, respecting voters' choices and continuity of office, and also other traditional redistricting is, I just thought that so that you're complying with that, makes it easier to draw the boundaries without having a council member in a district. And then I think there was some discussion about equalizing the districts. There's a allowable, I believe, a 10% deviation between one district and the next. So just wanted to comment on that, Miss Councilmember Rhino brought that up.
I will clarify the 10% number. The 10% deviation that the courts have ruled on in the past is total deviation. In other words, it's you can have a district that's plus 5% that deviation and minus 5 for a total of 10. Most courts look at 10% deviation and anything higher than 5% as suspect, especially in a city this size. So like I said, we don't want to go too far afield because the law clearly states that the number one priority is substantially equal population.
Okay, just real quick, I just want to mention that on the last when the council districts were established, where all the districts come together near Whitmore and Moffett, that I'm surprised the city hasn't got challenged on that districting because there's no natural boundaries. It's not easy identifiable, where all the districts come together. So just to close my comments, I think it would be a good thing if one complete district was on the west side of State Route 99. And then another thing I think would be good is if the council was able to hold off on selecting a new council member until this process of redistricting was substantially complete. And thank you very much for having this meeting and hearing the residents out and the stakeholders of the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Padilla. Do we have any other hands raised on Zoom?
No other hands raised, Mayor.
Okay, so members of the public, raise your hand if you would like to speak, sir. Come on up.
John Warren Series. The current districts as they're drawn have a certain number of people in them, obviously. And when and where will that information be available as to what the current status is as the districts are drawn? Now, where can we as citizens go to get that information?
The consultant just answered that just before Mr. Padilla speak, that he would have that within a couple of weeks to us.
Okay.
He didn't have that readily available.
He'll have that available, but where, as we as citizens, where can we go to get that information once it is available?
We have a website that's dedicated to the redistricting process by itself.
Okay, so that information will be there in a couple weeks?
Yes.
Okay, and the tools that he's talking about, where the citizens can draw their own maps and things, will that be available on that particular website?
Yes,
Mr. Attorney?
I have to defer to Doug on that one.
yes, yes. We will be getting them to you, hopefully within that time frame as well.
What time frame?
The 2 weeks.
2 weeks. So after 2 weeks, there's going to be a website available that we can go get all this information from.
You bet.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next person.
Listen to what the gentleman has to say. Sounds to me like there must be some population thing that we don't know about in regards to the 48 or 49,000 people in Ceres and dividing up into 4 districts. Is there any reason why by law or any other force that they can't divide it up and make it a 5th district out of this? Why do we have to?
When we adopted districts in, was it 2014 now? 15, it provided for 4 districts and a mayor at large. So you would have to amend that to change the districts.
So to redistrict out of 4, you would have to go to another process. You'd have to eliminate something to go to get another district.
Yeah, to change it in any way, you'd have to do another ballot initiative in effect.
And like the gentleman there said, you know, they're speculating on growth in certain areas. We don't know what that's going to be. That's all up in the air. So I understand it, but then at the same time, I don't. If, you know, somebody wants this district over here, they're trying to divide all that, it gets kind of confusing for the lane. So it seems to me like, and they talked about in the past, possibly going to a 5th district. That way too, that would be less population for one person to supposedly take care of in their district.
Thank you, Mr. Yakely. I appreciate your comments. Anybody else from the audience? Mr. Osgood, thank you.
No, this was on my yellow card, right?
You know, if it was, I do apologize.
Representation's
Thank you.
kind of my thing.
Number
Mr.
12.
Mr. Yakely steals my thunder. United States Constitution says there shall be no more than 1 representative for 30,000 individuals. At that point in time, the intent was for our House districts to be a size of 30,000. My personal viewpoint is our state assembly district should be 15,000 and our localities should be 7,000. If we have to go with another ballot initiative, maybe I'll start that. But my suggestion would be that we amend the Ceres Municipal Code to include up to 7 districts. That would make us approximately 7,000 person districts. council members could represent people in a much better manner. The less people we represent, the closer we are to those people. I'm going to harp on this in coming meetings of redistricting, but with the 5 districts, we're under 10,000 persons, still 9,892. So I think it would behoove us to get closer to our constituents rather than, as we continue to grow, staying at 4. I don't know that it requires a ballot proposition. I think we could do that through amending the municipal code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osgood. Anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this matter? We'll go ahead and double check, make sure no one's on Zoom,
No, Mayor.
no emails. Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Bring this back to the council. Is there any direction that we need to provide, or are we just having this first
Taking
discussion?
yeah,
Okay,
public input at this first time. This is the first, you have one hearing before you have maps drawn, and this is that hearing.
okay, so that is it, correct? Unless the council has any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I look forward to coming down there soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving. Okay, moving on to number 11, resolution number 2021-112. Public hearing to consider adoption of the 2020 water storage contingency plan. Mr. Jeremy Damas, you have an introduction for us, huh?
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, tonight we are here for the public hearing to consider the adoption of the 2020 water shortage contingency plan. Christina Geed with Blackwater Consulting Engineers is going to give a presentation. And once that's complete, we will take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Everyone, can you hear me okay? My name is Christiana Geed and I'm with Blackwater Consulting Engineers. We had the pleasure of getting to do the city's water management plan. Now we are here to talk about its water.
Sorry, before you continue, can you raise your mic?
Yes. Thank
Or,
you.
or if you can get, yeah, there you go. You had the same
Is
problem
that
as I
better?
did. There you go. That's what
Thank
it is.
you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
telling me. All right, I'm just going to start over.
Sure.
My name is Christiana Geed. I'm here with Blackwater Consulting Engineers, and we got to do this city's urban water management plan. And now we are here to talk about the water shortage contingency plan. Next slide, please. So just a little over a month ago, the city passed the urban water management plan. And now we're here to talk about a standalone document, which is the water shortage contingency plan. As of 2020, there's a new requirement by the Department of Water Resources to include a water shortage contingency plan. The plan, the purpose of the plan is to detail methods to proactively identify and respond to potential water shortages. Slide, please. Here, I'm sorry, it's kind of small for some of you, but here's the 10 different sections of that plan. And I'm going to go over some of the more important ones and go into them in detail. Next slide, please. The water shortage contingency plan outlines an annual water supply and demand assessment that the city will be required to submit beginning in 2022. The annual assessment will project water demand calculated using the population and the per capita water demand. And then it will take that and it will compare it to the water supply. So in the city's case, that is groundwater, but hopefully starting in around 2023, that will also include surface water through TID. Based on the comparison of supply and demand, the city will determine if shortage response actions are necessary. Slide, please. So here you can see the city's 3 existing drought preparedness water rationing stages. So for stage 1, that's minor or abnormally dry conditions. That would limit landscape irrigation to 3 days, 3 assigned days per week. And it would also prohibit water wasting activities. Stage 2, which the city has been implementing due to, I believe, the current drought, is when that limits landscape irrigation to 2 assigned days per week. And it also sets time limits for watering activities. In case of an extreme drought, the city has set stage 3 to prohibit all outdoor watering and most refilling of lakes or ponds. So for the water shortage contingency plan as a new requirement by the DWR, what they've done is they've set 6 stages rather than just have every water system have their own stages. They've set 3 primary stages that are based on water shortage. So what we've done is we've taken the existing stages that you all have, we've matched them to the DWR stages. So DWR stages 1 and 2 correlate to the city's stage 1 water rationing stage. The DWR stages 3 through 5 correlate with the city's stage 2, and DWR stage 6 correlates with the city's stage 3. And how we did that is we looked at approximately how much water you all will be saving based on the measures that you implement with each stage. Next slide, please. The shortage response actions are enforced by the city per Title 13, Chapter 9 of the City Municipal Code. First, the city will issue a warning, followed by a citation that may be appealed within 10 days. If a customer does not pay penalty fees, the city may elect to discontinue water service. So this is just showing that the city has the right to enforce these actions that are talked about in the water shortage contingency plan. Next slide. The city's water rate and connection fee schedule were updated most recently in 2017. The water rate structure includes a 2-tier volumetric charge and a service charge. So because the city charges based on volume, shortage response actions will result in reduced revenue for the city. And so how this will be managed is using financial reserves, deferring capital improvement projects, reducing non-critical operation and maintenance expenses, and then if necessary, you can also update the water rate study. Annual assessment, which we had talked about previously, it is a report that you all will do every year, and the water shortage contingency plan, which outlines how that will be done, work in tandem to monitor and report how the water supply is being managed. The annual assessment will compare water demand and supply and evaluate the impact of shortage response actions that are implemented. If data indicates that strategies are not adequate or can be reduced, then the water shortage contingency plan should be amended and adopted as required. This can be done outside of the 5-year cycle of updating the urban water management plan because the water shortage contingency plan is a standalone document. So now to adopt the water shortage contingency plan, the city must publish 2 newspaper notices. This requirement was already met with publications on September 29th and October 6th. The next requirement is this public hearing right now, where we will shortly receive any comments from council or from members of the city. Once all comments have been received and if any necessary changes need to be made, we can do that. Then the council will adopt the water shortage contingency plan and it will be submitted to DWR and California State Library. The document will also be made available to the public. Please. Now that I've walked through the water shortage contingency plan document, we'll take some time for questions or comments. Thank you.
Council, do we have any questions at the moment? We'll go ahead and open this now to the public so that we can take any comments from Zoom. Nobody on Zoom, no hands raised? Okay. Any members of the public that would like to speak on this? Yeakley?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to know how this came about and if Mr. Damas was involved in this at any point in construction of what this young lady was talking about to adopt. There's several things there. I think you need more time to get this to the citizens, print or somehow so they can have some feedback besides here. Because a lot of people don't show up. It's obvious. Two particular things on there that I didn't agree with. Series has always, as long as I've been here, has went to a 2-day schedule, odd even days on watering. There's so many people who abuse the watering system here already. And at the same point, the earth is changing. Some people say it's cars and whatever. I think it's just Mother Earth is changing. And we have no prediction on how things are going to go. So to adopt something to more than 2 days a week, I don't think that'd be a very good idea. And there was something there about shutting off someone's water. Well, I think we went through that in the previous city councils many years back, that there's ways that you can do things, but you can't shut people's sources off. If you shut someone's water off on their home, from what I understand from code enforcement, now the home becomes unlivable and they can force you to leave your home because it's not safe to live there anymore because you don't have water. So I think they need to look at all these different issues, ins and outs, and they should give a little bit more time before making a really hasty decision.
Thank you, Mr. Yankley. Any other members from the public?
Dave Pratt Series. I have a issue with this thing. The last drought, when we were forced to have meters and we cut back, and then the state told us cut back even more. And then when we started getting some water, all the other cities and such were increasing how much water they were using, and we're still staying on the 2-day system. Now they're asking us to cut because we're still on, as far as I'm concerned, on the drought system, that you're asking us to cut back even more. It seems like the valley gets the short shift of everything. And Ceres is getting the worst as far as I'm concerned. Like I said, Ceres jumped on the meters thing right off the bat. The city, the residents cut back. We're only doing 2 days a week, and we're still doing 2 days a week. So, thank you.
Thank you. That was good.
I think my question may either be for Mr. Hallinan or for the young ladies here, but Department of Water Resources, is that a state statute passed by the legislature or this regulation from the legislature? That was it. Thank you.
The drought plan that's in place today, what we're talking about now is the contingency plan, but the previous council adopted in 2014 the actual drought shortage contingency plan, the first one, and none of that has changed. So what DWR, they broke it down. Instead of having 3 tiers, where we have a normal water, we can water 3 days a week, whatever the case may be. We go to stage 2, where we're at now. Then there's a stage 3, which is emergency stage, where there's no watering outdoors. That was all implemented in 2014. We're not changing any of that. What we're doing now is just breaking that down. Instead of into the 3, DWR requiring us to break it to 6. That's the only change. The rules are still the same. And it's always been in place for us that if the water is abused in any way, we have the ability through the municipal code to shut water off. It's non-paid. If it's violations that are going unpaid, we'll shut water off.
I have a question for you, Jeremy. So how do we determine the tier system? Is this something that this is based on water usage, or this is based on what the state is coming down and telling us? So the drought,
So
obviously
there's-
they already told us that we're in a drought again, right?
Well, the drought really never ended.
You are correct. I remember.
2015, when the drought came in and we implemented stage 2, we never got out of the drought. In fact, 2 years ago, we were worse stage, we were worse then than we've ever been. So we're not out of the drought by any means. In 2014, when we started the program, we were required to by the State Water Board. And in doing that, we looked at it, and at the time, there was three stages, 3 levels. How are you going to implement the 3 levels? So one, our normal watering schedule was 3 days a week. Go to stage 2, when we started the drought, we implemented stage 2 to cut back to 2 days a week. We had to cut back water usage. If we didn't cut back water usage, we're going to have wells that were going to be impacted. We're going to have a lot of very serious and significant issues. Then level 3 was worst case scenario. If the drought continued, our demands continued to be high at a higher level, we were going to implement stage 3, which was no outdoor watering.
Gotcha. So what stage would you say we are in now?
2.
Or 2? Want to clarify? Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Sure.
Thank you, council. I just have a couple of questions, and I think Jeremy can probably answer them. While we were involved with the pandemic, and of course, we still are in that particular situation, but there was a time frame when people could not be evicted from their homes. You couldn't shut their water off. You couldn't shut off their services from the city, even if they did not pay their bill. Now, going forward, there's a time period when this stops and normal procedures take place, such as shutting off a person's water because they didn't pay their utility bill. And then you can force them to move out of their home, as Mr. Yegley referred to. Now, I know these are extreme measures that don't take place on a normal basis, but my question is, are we at that point where that can happen again? I was told by our previous city manager that that had been pushed down the road, that we could not shut people's utilities off. Can we do that now?
Not yet.
So when can we do that?
I believe the mandate is January 1. It's been lifted to January 1, so we can't implement any of the, the shut off procedures that we normally do for lack of payment until we start that process in January 1. And that process will begin with noticing. We also have new requirements where we have to do some additional noticing to the residents as well.
Okay, so that's the official date, January 1?
That's
Sure.
as of today.
As of today.
It's been
Okay.
changed.
Well, I understand that.
So stand by.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments from the public? Yegley, follow-up question.
I'd like to ask Mr. Damas, in your many years with the city, has anybody ever fell under that where they've had their water shut off? And like I said, code enforcement had told me personally, people growing pot on my own street as a grow house, if that particular home is shut off by water, then it's condemned and uninhabitable. Has that ever happened since you've lived here? Well, you probably don't live here, but since you worked here in the city in the water department or?
I don't recall any specific incidences of that happening.
But there's reality, it can. Am I correct in believing that when somebody's water shut off in the city and they don't pay, that code enforcement can come in there and evict them out of their home because it's uninhabitable without water? Because you have to have sewage released from your home, and water's a big item. So is that correct, that you have to have water at your home to live in it?
I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, I can't build a house on my street and not have water in there. The city won't give me a permit for it. So if I have water and they take it away, then I'm not able to habitate in my own home because I can't function as what we would consider a normal human being in a regular household, in a residential area.
So normally what happens is if a resident gets their water shut off for non-payment, they will come to finance and set up payment arrangements to get their water turned back on. There aren't residents out there that are off for long periods of time. I know what you're referring to, and there are rules, for the public health. I don't know exact specifics, but I know there are rules for that.
So people can make payments like a credit card, not so much a credit card, but payments until,
So what we allow is that if a resident falls behind, it happens every day, and they fall behind in their payments to where they can't keep up on their normal monthly bill, they get onto our shut-off list. Once they get onto the shut-off list, we go out there, we identify it, we shut them off. They can come into finance and payment arrangement to where they pay a certain amount of money per month to try to get caught back up,
and if they don't,
they'll get shut off again.
and then eventually, on the bad scenario, they could actually be evicted.
That would be a code enforcement question, yes.
Okay. Thank
They're
you.
not, to answer your question, they're not evicted, but it's red tagged as uninhabitable. They're not evicted per se, but the house is considered uninhabitable.
At that point, when you have to leave your home, if you.
Yes, but we're not evicting them. It's just uninhabitable
Okay, so you
structure
just-
based on their,
You just a different wordage for that, but the people would eventually, and hypothetically, if that ever happened, they would have to leave their home
correct.
in a certain time period.
Yes.
And with these payments that people could possibly make to catch up on their back utility for water, how long can they extend that out? Before it just gets kind of, you say that old saying, it's getting kind of old, pay up.
Yeah, it's 12 months.
12 months. So then 12 months and it goes to what the attorney says.
Well, they have a payment arrangement. If they pay whatever that portion is that they're owed to the city in the rears, that 12-month period, then they'll,
And that's agreed upon on the onset
Call.
of them making an
correct,
agreement.
it's a contract.
After 12 months, it goes into another category. After 12 months, it goes into another category because they're still delinquent after 12 months.
Right, but for all purposes, most residents pay their bills.
You would think so.
They get caught up.
Times are changing.
And times are changing and times have been changing.
Yeah.
We recognize that.
All right, thanks for straightening that out.
Thank you, Mr. Yeakley.
Just so we're clear, it's not only water, it's water, sewer, garbage.
I just want to remind everyone that the 5-minute provision is limited to one person at one time only. Does anybody else would like to speak that hasn't spoken already? Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Now they bring this back to council. Any questions from the council? Doesn't look like we have any questions at all.
I'll move to approve resolution 2021-112, public hearing to consider the adoption of a 2020 water shortage contingency plan.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Casey. Councilmember Rhino,
yes.
Vice Mayor Silvera,
Yes.
and Mayor Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, council discussion and action for filling the city council seat District Number 4 vacancy. And we'll begin with the city attorney, Tom Hallinan, to give us a brief overview on this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you're familiar, there's two ways to fill a vacancy. You can appoint the person or you can call for a special election. In this case, because of the timing of the vacancy, if you called an election, if you call an election, that person would fill, whoever wins would fill the remainder of the term. Downside of that is the cost is $40,000. If you appoint, the person would serve until the election in November of 22. And then that person the winner would fulfill the remainder of the last 2 years of that term. We've provided a potential timeline if you want to do an application process. You don't have to do that. You could just directly appoint someone. If that's your pleasure, it's again, basically up to you how you want to fill that vacancy.
Okay. Before we bring this to council, we'll allow public comment first. If you guys have any public comments, we'll go ahead and start off with the persons in the room. Osgood, go ahead.
I had a long meeting with Mr. Hallinan here this week. He and I both agreed on the legislation on this thing. As always, I think the people should have the voice And this is where I was at with the polling item number 4 this evening. We spend a lot of money on things that aren't necessary. We spend a lot of money to send people to conferences, or we hand out a lot of bonuses. The one job we have is to provide the people's voice for our representation. We just allowed District 1 to do that. It cost us, if I recall the numbers that the city clerk gave me, $33,000. That's offset by whatever Mr. Condon paid, but we're not quite 40,000. 33,000, we just spent almost 10 to board 5 guys in a hotel. We gave countless numbers of employees $5,000 bonuses. We can afford to fund a special election if that's your choice. Here's the situation. We redistrict, the district changes. And that person, after 2 years, represents the new district. At the same time, we have 2 other people representing new districts. We kind of need to keep that in mind. Whatever you decide, let's make sure it's within state regulations, the laws. Also add, we don't need this to draw out forever. Let's make a decision in the next couple of weeks. And let's be cognizant of the fact that here we are with another vacancy, another situation where I was asking for the last several months that we address the points of our municipal code, the portions that are not guiding us in how we will proceed. There is nothing in our municipal code that says this is how we expect to handle vacancies. While state law directs us in appointments, it also says we can have an appointment and a special election process. We can have a special election process, or we can have just a straight appointment process. It gives us the option as cities and localities to decide how we want this to happen. We're all very aware that the Ceres Courier has stated that we have never done an election up until the point Mr. Casey was elected, that we've always appointed. Well, there's no direction from the citizen to you, our governing body, through the municipal code, how vacancies will be addressed. And I think moving past this vacancy and into the future, regardless of how many thousands of dollars we spent to address the municipal code, it's time to address the municipal code. There are a lot of problems that we absolutely have to correct and give council guidance at the citizenry through public hearings and changing the municipal code with public participation, how to change these things, how to work them in the future.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public that would like to speak on this issue? Seeing none, moving on to Zoom.
And that's Frank Borelli. I will unmute your mic. Your mic
Yes,
is
hi, can you
unmuted.
hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Council, first off, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I've lived in Ceres District 4 for 32 years. With the consultation this weekend with several of my neighbors in my neighborhood, I'd like to ask the city council to consider holding an election for District 4. We feel that the people that live in District 4 know the district better than anyone on this council, with no disrespect, and strongly feel that the council person from District 4 should be elected by the people who live in it. We all understand that we just had an election for District 1, and we feel that is District 1 any better or any worse than the District 4 that we live in now? We also understand that whoever you asked, either 40,000 or 35,000, it costs for this election 33,000. I know the city spends more than that each day on things that basically we feel are not important, as electing a council person from this district who will have a say in making our city better. An election is a way people can choose their candidate on their preferences in a representative democracy. Elections bring people together, get them talking and discussing issues that improve our city. One of the many reasons we believe there's low voter turnout in elections, not only just series, but elections in general, is due to the lack of interaction between citizens and our government. We're sending the wrong message to the citizens of Ceres, especially District 4, by even considering to appoint and not to have an election for this district. Our hope is that the council will consider holding an election for the citizens of District 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No other hands are raised.
Seeing and hearing none, the public hearing is now closed, so I bring this back to council. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I did not see you. Go ahead, step on up.
2 weeks ago, I asked where the extra revenue was going to come from in regards to giving some of our employees raises. Because part of it came from the pandemic money emergency fund, and part of it came from our general fund. And then part of it, I was told by the finance person, was going to come from our reserves. So I assume that's what's taking place with what happened tonight with the Peace Officers Association and those other folks that were given their $5,000 bonuses and an additional $5,000 next year and a 9% raise in 2 years. So I assume some of this money is coming from our reserves. My question to you is, what percent is our reserves going to be at going forward after doing all this? What's the percentage that are in our reserves right now? After spending all this money, doing the raises and other things. Does anybody have that information? We're using reserves to pay for these raises. What are we going to have left?
He's talking about comparing it to the cost.
Currently reserves, I believe are around 30%. 30,
30%?
yes.
Thought it was closer to 18.
That's what council does not want to go under 18%, but it's currently at around 30%.
Okay, so we have 30% in our reserve. What are we going to have after spending the money for all these raises?
Well, we don't know that number yet because we're not done.
But when this was all approved and contracts were being decided, wasn't that projected where we were going to be? What was going to be left? What would our reserve levels be after we spend all this
Well,
money?
currently with the current contracts that have been approved, we're at 27, almost 28.
28%?
Yes,
Where our reserves are going to be?
yes.
Okay, my suggestion, and the reason for that question was $239,000 was going to be spent out of the reserves 2 weeks ago. A special election only costs maybe $33,000. So there is room in our reserves to find another $30,000 for a special election if the council wants to approve that. And I would think that that would be something that you should consider, that the money is there available and our reserves will still be above that 18, 20% that you folks would like to leave it at, which I think is a good idea. So please consider that in your decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeakley?
Tell me, the attorney, I would assume, how long is this process going to take again this time? Isn't there a time factor on when they have to appoint someone or someone voted in?
Yes, it's 60 days.
And haven't we started that 60 days when Mr. Cooper resigned?
Correct.
And so what's that leave? A couple weeks you've burnt already?
We have until December 10th.
December 10th. That's what I want to know. And the people outside here listening on Zoom or whatever, I hope they know that too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else that has not spoken yet would like to speak? Okay. We'll bring this back to the council. Any questions from the council? Any input? How we're going to move forward?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
fellow
sir.
council members, I'm part of the expense of the last special election. I feel like the one person who called in, I think it's important that the people have an opportunity to choose the representing them in District 4. So my motion is, I'm not really not prepared to make the motion, but I would be in favor of holding the special election. If I read the document correctly, there's a couple of ways we could handle it. One way is, I guess tomorrow, the mayor, the council could appoint somebody and they could be in place by November 11th or 12th or something. The other choice, if it's a special election, the earliest it could be done is in April. Then I guess the following 30 days rule that applied to me, that would make it May. I still think it's a valid point to have the special election.
Thank you, Councilmember Casey. Mr. Rhino, did you have a question? Okay. Vice
Yeah, I
Mayor.
have a comment. A couple things. We had an election about 11 months ago for this actual seat. In my opinion, going to a special election in April, which is another 6 months, probably wouldn't be the best idea for our city. I was completely comfortable with the appointment process. If we could expedite that, start it as soon as possible, accept appointment applications, open and close it, and have our live meeting where we question all of the candidates, the applicants, and then select somebody out of that. And if not, then go to a special election. I'm 100% behind trying to appoint somebody as opposed to going to another special election that would be 6 months from now.
Okay. I will have to agree with Vice Mayor on this particular matter, even though last time I wasn't fully agreeing towards the end. I think in this particular situation, we have very limited time. If we go through a process such as what he's suggesting, we can have people apply and hopefully go from there and stop the 2-2. And that's what my hope is today. Any other comment?
Would agree that we should move forward with an application period because, as we all know, what happened the last time, and the idea that we could not even have a special election until April 12th, I don't think is anything that would fit the citizens, that we could potentially be stuck with some important issues and wind up with a 2-2. There's no guarantee, but that could happen again, and we've already been down that road too many times. But for the application filing period, I really would opt for the 1-week application filing period. And I would like to have a special council meeting to conduct the interview, but rather than wait very long, if we were to do a timeline as shown in the staff report, that 1-week application, October 26th through November 3rd at noon, I would hope that rather than have the interviews for the council applicants on November 8th at our regular council meeting, I would prefer to have a special meeting just for the interview process, and sooner the better. November the 9th would be great, in my opinion.
I concur.
The question is that enough time for staff? If that's just a question I'm pondering, if that makes any sense.
So just for clarification, the 1-week period would be October 26th through November 3rd. And instead of interviewing at the regular council meeting on the 8th, you'd want to interview special city council meeting on the 9th.
Correct. And I would think if we made that decision tonight, any noticing or anything like that, have time to do it, we would have the applications, but we still will be interviewing people on the 9th, so I don't think that there would be a holdup or turnaround time to get us the information or anything. Yeah, I see. We're gonna have them all come before us, and it could be 3 people, it could be 7 people, but I think it's important that there be a special meeting to do the interviews. And I think the special meeting should be like a council meeting that starts at 6 o'clock.
I agree with the unknown factor of how many potential applicants we have, trying to fit that in with all our regular city business at a regular council meeting would probably wouldn't be in the best interest of anybody. So I concur, the 9th would be great for that special council meeting.
We have a council meeting on the 8th, right? Well, I would call for a special meeting on the 9th then. Okay. If we,
Mayor, and the time for the special council meeting, is that going to depend on how many applicants, or do you want it at 6 p.m. time as normal?
I think it should be 6 p.m. because that's the standard council meeting time. And
Makes sense to me.
yeah, that makes sense.
my only question is, when does the city observe Veterans Day? Is it the actual November the 11th, or
Yeah,
is it November the 9th? You know?
11.
Okay, well, I know when it is. I just didn't know when the city observed it. Thank you.
Councilmember. Okay, so I see Casey does have an
Sure,
additional comment.
my question, it appears that we haven't made the formal yet, but it appears that we're going to be headed toward an application process. How will you notify the general public of the application process? That there's an application, that there's a vacancy. How will you notify the general public?
We will post it on the city website first thing in the morning, as we have subscribers to our news flash, as well as the city manager will issue a press release morning.
Yeah, I understand the urgency of it, and I wonder if there's some way you could put the notice in the billing for the water October. I know that state law requires certain things to be published in the newspaper. I subscribe to the Ceres Courier, and sometimes I don't get the Courier. And then by the Wednesday evening, when I get off work, I can't buy the Courier. So I think it's important that if we're going to do the application process, that we somehow notify as many people as possible. So maybe not, I don't know, do the bills go out in the end of the week? Is it too late to put it in?
The Series Courier is published just once a week. Maybe staff would work with the Series Courier to put an article out.
I do believe the Sirius Courier is online. They are listening, and obviously I would assume that they would. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
The utility bills will go out after the period is over.
I didn't understand.
The utility bills,
Right.
you wanted to have something inserted, the bills will actually be going out after that period. The period you're accepting applications is over.
Right, that's what I'm suggesting that, I understand the urgency of the other council members. I'm still learning the process, but I'm just suggesting as a compromise, somehow or another, you notify as many people as possible. And the Series Courier, like I say, I subscribe to the Series Courier, especially now that I've been elected. I look for articles. And one, I think it was last Wednesday, it wasn't delivered. And when I went to get it at the store that I would normally buy it, it wasn't there. So I don't recognize that to be an adequate thing. And also, not everyone goes to the Series City webpage. I'm just suggesting, consider extending the application process. Somehow you can notify everyone. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Rhino.
Well, I know that a lot of people are into social media and not I think the city has enough social media pages that we could post it on there as well. Because I think, I get the Courier, but I think a lot of younger people are more into social media than you and I might be, Jim.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, this is Alex. I think we can take that direction, take those comments from council's direction to the staff to cast as wide a net as possible. I think we can work with the Courier. We will issue, as the clerk mentioned, a press release. I'm guessing the Modesto Bee will probably pick it up, as well as we can post the information on the various city social media platforms.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. Is there any other discussions or questions or comments? All right. We have one person. I see him. Relax. Come on up.
You know, basically, this is for District 4. Why can't you
Sure.
just send out a notice to those people in District 4? Not everybody gets the newspaper or reads. Don't have, a lot of them don't have time. I know when we were taking the bee, it never showed up. So I know you can't put it in the water bill, it's too late, but you can send send just strictly to those in District 4. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councilmember Rhino.
And I think that's a good idea, but given the time for the application starting tomorrow and ending on November 3rd, I'm thinking that most of the notices we would mail out would probably get to residents probably after the date, because the United States Postal Service is not necessarily fast, and you have to allow time to make up all mailing labels and mail all of that. So I think if we had more time, that might be a good idea, but I just don't think I just don't think it would work. It would not be effective in this case.
No, absolutely. Come on up.
Tell any of the four of you anything you don't know. Two of us that are applying are here this evening, waiting on a decision. The other gentleman is also waiting on a decision. We right now, 3 District 4 members are going to apply regardless of what you choose. You've already decided that we're going to an application and an appointment process. Okay? So just to put Mr. Casey's mind at ease and everybody else's, the two of us that are here this evening are okay with the dates so far. We're just waiting for it to be okayed. And I'm sure the third member is also anxious to get started. We want someone there representing our constituents in our district as soon as possible. And then in 2 years, maybe the 3 of us, we can ask the people who they want. Or state law says we have an appointment process. If that's the process you choose, we can just move on tonight, get it on.
Appreciate the comments, Mr. Osgood. Thank you. Councilmember Rhino.
I just wanted to clarify that by doing the appointment process, because of state law, it will not be to fulfill the term of Condit's seat. It's actually going to be our next election, which will be just over a year, November of 2022.
Just under 2 years. Correct. So under 2 years, I'm sure that everybody was fully aware of that. If not, so under 2 years, just a year and a month. So a year and a month, whoever we decide to appoint will have about a year and a month, and they will have to run again.
And then to clarify that, then that person, if so choose, would run again 2 years later.
Yes.
That's correct.
To get back on the overlapping district, city council districting process.
Okay, so if there's no more comments. We have a motion. Make sure we get.
I believe we need a motion, but I'll move to start the application process to fill an appointment to the District 4 seat tomorrow to end on November 3rd, and to have a special meeting on the 9th at 6 p.m. to interview and select the candidate.
I will second that, but I will clarify the application filing period will end at noon on November the 3rd.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Casey,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhino,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Silvera,
Yes.
and Mayor Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, so now we're moving on. There is no discussion items. Moving on to referrals. Number 13. Consideration of Councilmember Casey's request for the Planning Commission appointments by City Council District. Councilmember Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fellow council members, citizens of Ceres. I would like to propose that the council consider revising the makeup of the Planning Commission, perhaps as early as the first of the year 2022. Presently, Chapter 5 of the Code of Ordinance, first paragraph paragraph 2.05.020. The first thing I would like to address, it calls for the makeup of the city council of 6 members, 5 not officials of the city, and 1 non-voting student commissioner. Well, we haven't had a student commissioner since 2013. So part of my motion is, Mr. Mayor, let's move forward and appoint someone, or let's strike that from our ordinance, because that's what it says, but we haven't had one since 2013. The terms of office is the second paragraph, 2.05.030. It calls for the terms to be 4 years staggered and to be appointed by the mayor and concurrent approval of the council. Well, I would like, again, for the council to consider, maybe as early as January 2022, to review the ordinance and change it. The present situation allows for people to serve indefinitely. It prevents people willing to serve no opportunity to do so because they feel like they don't have a chance of being appointed. Prevents the presentation of new and innovative ideas to develop and construction. Prevents the new thought process from being expressed based on the movement of social norms and more. And it may encourage old school of thought to prevail at the expense of city development. I understand the Planning Commission is governed by certain state and local laws. Sometimes longevity can circumvent the real benefit of those laws. My suggestion would be that the planning commissioners be appointed by each district. Presently, District 2 has no representation. So I would suggest that each council person be allowed to appoint a member out of their district, and that the mayor, presently that we have 5 members, and that the mayor can appoint a person at large. I would suggest that they serve 3-year terms with staggered 5 of the 5 commissioners and no more than 9 years. Planning commissioners must live within the city, and the 1 non-voting student that I brought up earlier could be from the Ceres School District. We have 2 high schools now. But again, if we're not going to appoint someone and follow through with that, maybe we should strike that from the ordinance. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, council members.
Thank you, Casey. So your request is not just only take consideration to for each count, of each planning commissioner to be in a certain district, but also in addition to that, have a student appointed. Is that kind of those two things that you're?
Sure, that really the gist of my suggestion is that sometime between now and January or February, that the council work with staff to see how we can rework this so that each district has a representation and that we have people that can rotate into the system. I realize that the beginning of it, we have to take into consideration the people that we have. And in no way am I making reference to the fact that we have an ineffective planning commission now. It's just that I think, like we spoke earlier, that each district should be represented. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to hear from the council. Opinion.
For clarification, City Attorney, we aren't actually discussing the item. We're just discussing whether or not we want to put it on a future agenda.
Correct.
Okay, so that's all we need.
If you're
to-
intrigued by the idea or want to see it on agenda, then
Oh,
that would be your
okay.
direct, just like
Um,
we've done in the past. Now, I was going to mention if that there's been some discussion about maybe revising how we do that, but that's a discussion for later.
Well, I think that was something that we asked to be on a future agenda or procedures. Currently, by him contacting Councilmember Casey, contacting the city manager and putting this under council member referrals, then our next step as the council is we aren't going to actually discuss the item. We're just going to discuss whether or not we want to put it on a future agenda. And I would say that I don't know when we get to the actual discussion how I would vote, but I do believe that we should allow Councilmember Casey's request to go forward to a future agenda.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, after spending almost a year on the planning commission and understanding that the decisions made on the planning commission were made for the entire city, I'm comfortable with it as it's currently situated, but I would not be against or stop the process to put it on a future agenda for discussion.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm just gonna talk real quick, if you don't mind. Yeah, well, I think I'm gonna agree with all the council members. We could have a discussion about this item and possibly get a staff report on what it would look like. And I understand that you guys have a lot on your table at the moment. So I don't know if January would be the right timing. But I kind of want to, it would be sooner. I just want to make sure that staff is going to have an adequate time to provide us with information on what it would look like. Or would you rather us just have the conversation and just kind of give you direction then? Would you prefer us to give you direction then when we have that discussion and then come up with the staff report?
I think that the conversation is whether or not be an item on a future agenda that where the council could have a more in-depth conversation and then at that point provide direction.
And we'll
to
decide that.
staff.
I'm
So
perfectly fine with that.
But
I'm
I'm
sorry,
not following that. If we were to have a more in-depth conversation, we would expect to have some sort of information from city staff to guide us in that, on what it would look like.
That's correct.
That
Thank
would be
you.
true
And
that,
if we have to wait till December, I'm perfectly comfortable with that also.
I think it's probably December. But as we near the holidays, I'm sure there will be interest amongst community members. And I wouldn't want to preclude their participation by having that conversation around the holiday. So let us take a look at the agenda, see when we might have an open agenda. Councilmember Casey, December, January, that work with? Okay, so I think, sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Alex, but I want to actually get a quick if there's any comments from the public would like to speak on this matter. Seeing none on Zoom. The direction is see this on a future. agenda item.
You will
Okay.
see this on a future agenda.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you,
Appreciate it.
council.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on to reports. I have none. City Council?
I do.
Okay.
I wanted to touch on a comment that was made earlier by a couple citizens regarding the Modesto Fire Building for call. As the city manager will remember, I sent him an email as soon as I saw it when it came out. He reached out to the fire chief Ernst, got his response, and then he sent the council what that comment was. So given the fact that I also have constituents who have reached out to me about it, I just wanted to say what was basically in the staff report, or the email was that the action that the Modesto City Council is taking does not affect Ceres, even though Modesto Fire does service us. And I really just wanted that to be on the record, that that is what city manager told us, and that's what Fire Chief Ernst told you.
Thank you, council member. Casey, you had a report?
I don't really have a report, but you know, our motto is together we achieve. And coming up next Friday, the November the 4th, our Chamber of Commerce of Ceres is having a meeting to make some decisions about the direction they're going. They have some membership issues, and you know, that together we achieve. I take that to mean everybody in Ceres, not just the city staff and not just the council people, and not just, it's everyone. And I would encourage everyone that lives in Ceres, lives in the region of Ceres, to attend that November 4th meeting, because commerce is where the general fund money comes from. And the better commerce that we have in the city of Ceres, the better everything will be. So please consider going to the November 4th meeting. I'm sorry I don't have all the details, but it's going to be here in this building, and it'll be on the city webpage, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. We have some,
Yeah,
Vice Mayor, go
it
ahead.
is here at the community center at 6 p.m.
Well, thank you. Okay, city manager, do you have any reports?
Yes, I do, Mayor. Thank you. Just a reminder to folks that on Saturday, we'll be holding our Trunk or Treat event at Whitmore Park from 1 to 4. Treats while supplies last. So get there early, make sure Ghosts and Goblin can get the treats at the Trunk or Treat event. Then thank you, Councilmember Rhino. I was going to speak to that fire fee recovery. Just to clarify, that proposal being considered by the Modesto City Council will not impact the city of Ceres, will not be collected at this point within the city of Ceres. For something like that to be effective, it would take a formal action of you as the city council. And then I think we all know we got a little bit of rain over the last couple days. I just wanted to send a thank you to the public works crew that was out diligently working late into the evening yesterday, early morning today, late today, clearing drains, making sure the flooding was kept to a minimum. So thank you to that crew, Ken Rocha, Sean Walker, Michael Estacio, and Hank Unruh. Very reflective of the Together We Achieve motto for the city. So that's all I have this evening, Mayor.
That is great. Thank you, guys. City attorney.
No report, Mayor.
Okay. Any of the department heads have anything to say? Is the county supervisor or his or Russ on the line?
I do not see.
No? Okay. We will now adjourn this meeting and go to closed session for conference with labor negotiator. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this in regards? And on this closed session. After the closed session, the city attorney will return to report out. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay, reporting from closed session conference with the labor negotiator. The council gave direction on negotiations with the mid-management employees and did not take up the public safety mid-managers item.